Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to learn how to play Sagrada. It's this beautiful dice drafting game for 1 to 4 players, and a game usually takes about 30 minutes. In this explainer, you'll learn everything you need to know to create your very first stained glass masterpiece. Yep, by the end of this short guide, you'll be all set to play your first game. So let's dive in. So, what's the big idea here? Well, your goal is simple to understand, but, pretty challenging to pull off. You want to become the most celebrated artisan. And how do you do that? You do it by scoring the most points. You'll be earning those points by carefully placing colored dice into your window. Pretty straightforward, right? At the end of the game, the player with the highest score wins. Okay, first things first, let's get your workshop set up. Don't worry, it's really quick. All right, so first, every player needs to get their own area ready. Go ahead and grab a window frame board. You'll get 2 pattern cards. They're double-sided, so just pick one of the 4 patterns to play and slide it right into your frame. Next, you'll draw 1 private objective card. Keep this a secret. And finally, take a look at your pattern card and grab the number of favor tokens shown on it. Now for the stuff that goes in the middle of the table. Place the round track right in the center. Then draw and flip over 3 public objective cards and 3 tool cards so everyone can see them. Get all 90 dice and put them in the bag. Last thing, just choose a start player and hand them the bag. That's it, you're all set. So, how does the game play? It happens over exactly 10 rounds, and each of those rounds follows the same simple structure. Every single round has 3 phases. First, the start player draws dice out of the bag. It's 2 dice for each player plus 1 extra. They roll them and that forms the draft pool for the round. Second, players take turns drafting 1 die at a time. And third, that 1 die that's left over at the end gets placed on the round track. The way turns work is called a snake draft, which just means you'll actually get to take 2 turns each round. And on your turn, you have a couple of options. You can take a die from the draft pool and place it in your window. Or you could spend some of your favor tokens to use a tool card's special ability. You can also just pass and not do anything, but you'll almost always want to take a die. Okay, so this brings us to the real heart of the game, the central puzzle. Placing dice is where all the strategy is, and you have to follow a few really important rules. There are 4 big rules you always have to follow. 1. Your very first die has to be placed somewhere along an edge or in a corner of your window. 2. Every other die you place has to be adjacent to a die that's already there, and diagonally counts. 3. If a space on your pattern has a color or a number on it, the die you place there has to match. And 4, this is a big one, you can never place a die right next to another die of the same color or the same number. And that means horizontally and vertically. Let's look at a quick example here. See that blue 5? Placing it there is a totally legal move. It's next to the yellow 4, which is fine, and it follows all the rules. But you could not place that blue 5 in a spot that's next to another 5, or right next to another blue die. So what happens when you get stuck? That's what the tool cards are for. You can spend your favor tokens to use their abilities to, bend the rules a little. Here's how the cost works. The first time anybody uses a tool, it costs just 1 token. But after that, every time someone uses that same tool, they have to pay 2 tokens. So, after 10 rounds, the game's over. It's time to sit back, admire your work, and, of course, see who won by tallying up the scores. Your final score comes from 4 different places. First, you'll score points for each of the 3 public objective cards out on the table. Then, you'll score points from that secret private objective you've had all game. You also get 1 point for every favor token you have left over. And finally, you lose 1 point for every empty space on your window. Let's just run through a quick example. For the column color variety card, this player gets 10 points because they have 2 columns with no repeating colors. Nice! For light shades, they get 4 points because they have 2 sets of dice with a 1 and a 2 value. Now, let's check their private objective. Let's say their card was Shades of Purple. All they do is add up the pips on all their purple dice. In this window, that's a 5, plus a 6, plus another 6, for a grand total of 17 points from that card alone. So, to get the final score for this window, we just do the math. We add the 26 points they got from the public objectives, plus the 17 from their private objective. Then we subtract 3 points for those empty spaces. And the grand total is 40 points. And it's as simple as that. The player who has the most points is the master artisan and wins the game. If there's a tie, the player who scored more from their private objective wins the tiebreak. Okay, before you start playing, I've got one really crucial tip that'll help you out in your first game. Here's a key bit of strategy. Try not to block yourself in. For example, if you have a space that needs a red die, try to avoid putting another red die right next to it. If you do that, you've made that red space impossible to fill later on because of the placement rules. So always be thinking ahead and try to keep your options open. And one final warning, be really careful with those placement rules. If you realize you've made a mistake, you actually have to remove dice from your board until it's legal again. Those new empty spots will cost you points at the end, so it's always worth it to double-check your moves. And really, that's everything you need to know. You're all set to start crafting your beautiful stained glass window. You're ready to play Sagrada? Good luck!